Right. Hello, John.
Hi Shane, how you doing?
I'm really well, mate. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Really good.
Good. It's great to see you. Thank you very much for agreeing to speak about your experience of the TDSL Live Program. Greatly appreciate your feedback about all of this.
Hmm. Um, yeah. I mean, I've I've been involved in sort of various, being in various sort of courses and things I've read and things I've explored, and there's various sort of patterns there about understanding about this inner dialogue that we have, and how our perceptions of the world can affect how we look at things, how we behave. So I had some awareness around that. And so yes, I guess I did have some awareness of that concept, but in terms of exploring it in a more direct, conscious way, that's not something I'd really spent a lot of time doing, and certainly in the way we did from a TDSL perspective.
Okay, thank you. So, would it be true then to say that as a result of engaging in the TDSL Live Program, it enabled you to successfully pinpoint and become aware of the ways in which the dialogue you've been communicating toward yourself had been holding you back in certain ways in the past?
From an awareness perspective, absolutely, yeah. Um, I think the pinpointing that sort of it feels like a work in progress sort of a feeling, because that awareness in itself is then sort of yeah, highlighting those points where you can sort of pinpoint things. I mean, I guess from engaging into sort of the TDSL program, I didn't feel as I was approaching it with sort of specific issues that I needed to address. However, but by exploring this and having more awareness, you realize that you get an awareness of things you weren't aware of. So that's one of the things that's definitely been beneficial. So that's something I hadn't appreciated, the depth at which we hold ourselves back, even when you don't even realize there's necessarily a problem or an issue there, and that in itself is the issue. So so that's what I find interesting with that, certainly.
How easy to understand and straightforward in terms of how to apply was your experience of the information that we provided on the live program?
So yeah, so in terms of following, the information was really clear. And in terms of implementation, that was straightforward in a process sense. But then in terms of getting insights from that, that's something then that's something that from a personal perspective, felt like I had to take some responsibility to work with that. And certainly it's an ongoing process as well. That's still happening right now. um, but in terms of accessing the information and being able to understand it and apply it, yeah, that's very nice and straightforward.
Thank you, John. Could I ask you, in your own words, how would you describe what the dialogue of self liberation is and what it does?
I see it as sort of it's a tool, or technique. It's sort of a collection of tools and approach, if you like. It's sort of a mix of those things. It's a tool in which you can better be aware and understand the sort of the inner dialogue that you have with yourself, and how that can hold you back, and how you can better communicate with yourself to ultimately have a more effective relationship with yourself, which in effect, where in turn will affect the behaviors that you engage in, which ultimately will then result in different outcomes. So yeah, so I can see the pattern of how you breaking some of those negative patterns can result in a much more positive outcome.
So personally, what benefits do you feel the dialogue of self-liberation provides when a person begins to engage in the process?
For me personally, certainly the awareness, this consciousness sort of element is the big sort of overarching sort of influence I would say this has had. One of the sort of more specific areas that I've found, it's this sort of concept of space, whereby I'm seeing that it creates more space between things, between communications. It sort of separates things where, you would just be operating in and on the communication rather than having the space where you can sort of see the way you were communicating, and you can stop in that space and then choose to communicate in a different way. And that space, whilst it might just be very, very small, it can be, it can have such a positive difference. But then that becomes habitual. So I'm starting to sort of cultivate that space more and more, and that in effect cultivates the habits of communicating in a better way. So I'm feeling that's becoming more normalized. But I think there's still working on it, still catching, still pinpointing those moments. So it's nice when you still spot things and go, okay, I'm saying this to myself, or maybe I need to look at that.
Absolutely, it's ongoing process, isn't it? Really, absolutely. Ongoing work. So, what do you feel the benefits of doing this are?
I think anything where you are more conscious and more engaged in, how you communicate with yourself, and in turn, the thing that you're engaged with, whether it's a person or an activity, I think naturally it sort of rolls into that as well. So how you interact with other people and the world around you, that has an influence on that. And in that, I think the way that people will interact back with you will be different as well. So I think there's a natural change going on there, and in a way, you can be influencing people around you, in a quite a subtle way, but in a positive way, hopefully. So.
Thanks very much, John. Could I ask you now, please? Self-compassion is a theme in the Dialogue of Self-Liberation live program. At a certain stage during the process, we focus on self-compassion. How do you feel the Dialogue of Self-Liberation can help a person to begin to develop greater self-compassion?
It's not a topic I'd had a lot of time done a lot of reflection on previously, but I could see how, certainly again in that awareness where you spot some of the patterns that you were involved in the past, the first thing is that awareness, just to see that. Then once you've had that awareness, you can be compassionate with yourself, and sort of forgive yourself is the way that you've treated yourself, and decide to sort of well, once you see it, you think, well, why would I do that to myself? So it's just that there's a natural sort of change that you see it, and you want to make a more positive, conscious sort of difference how you then communicate. So it's certainly been impactful in that sense, and I can see how that sort of letting go of things in the past and forgiving yourself for having even done that to yourself, that's that I can see how that works with and it's strange because even though it's sort of self-compassion, it's not a concept that I'm sure a lot of people do, but there's a lot of people that don't even have this concept of self-compassion. So even just spending time with that concept and understanding that in itself is very influential, I think.
If more people in the world were to engage in developing the dialogue of self-liberation within themselves, what benefits do you feel this could contribute to society in general?
I think this could be significant. One of the things I've felt for a long time, and certainly a lot of things that I've read, and a lot of things that seem to point in the direction that we need this increase in consciousness, collectively, individually conscious, more individual and as a group. But ultimately, this idea of collective consciousness that comes from individuals, though. So individually, we need to change. We need to be more aware. And certainly for me, TDSL it's a tool that directly affects how you can develop consciousness. So I think for some people it might be that this is quite a new area, and even exploring that idea around being more aware and more conscious of dialogue and communication, but it rolls into other things as well. So that for some people might be the start of like opening up and trying to be more reflective. But then for people who've been practitioners of various techniques, more mindfulness, meditation type of techniques, then this is another tool that can help in that. So to me, it's quite interesting how it fits together with all of those sorts of different techniques. So I don't see any sort of conflicts or any reasons why they wouldn't work together. But it gives another dimension. It gives another perspective to look at things. And so the specific TDSL perspective on this idea around the communication, and certainly the negative communications with ourselves, that wasn't a specific focus that I had before. Whereas now it's sort of, I feel like it fits into my toolkit amongst other things. So it's it feels that a little bit more rounded, So it's good.
That's really great news, John. I'm really glad to hear that you feel that it's something that can be integrated and assimilated harmoniously with the other tools in your toolkit. And it's not at odds with any of those other methodologies or techniques or philosophical approaches, or even religious approaches.
Yeah,
it's not in conflict.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, the tools and techniques and things that I've used in the past. I mean, I'm very interested in things from a very sort of philosophic or spiritual sort of way. Certainly, the more sort of religious sort of aspects, I've tended to sort of not quite as I don't resonate so much with those, but I guess in more recent years, I mean, I've realized this more sort of I guess there's a sort of spiritual, philosophical sort of way of looking at things is really healthy, and what I tend to find, things that fit well, there's a lot of common themes there, and certainly with what I've found with TDSL, I haven't found anything that conflicts there at all. And if anything, it just complements and reinforces other things that have some of the other sort of philosophies that I've looked at. Things like Buddhism or mindfulness and things like that. Again, I look at say Buddhism in a sort of very philosophic way, not so much in the religious way. But to me, I've spent time sort of talking to a lot of practitioners of Buddhism and some monks and things like that, and even then they talk about Buddhism as a tool for the mind. It's about it's very much a psychology based. It's about understanding the mind, and see how that aligns very much with the TDSL thinking as well. Albeit there's a slightly different approach. It's different. We'll just look at it from a different angle, but it's very, very complementary.
How would you describe the dialogue of self-liberation to a friend who was suffering?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend TDSL to them. I mean, to me, I don't see any downsides, any sort of risk, if you like, by looking at TDSL. I guess the only thing is it's down to individuals of whether they would want to engage with it or not. I mean, there was certainly times where for me to get value in certain areas, sometimes you have to be quite reflective and, you know, dig a little bit deeper than you would normally. And I can understand for some people that would be quite difficult, quite challenging. But this to me is the way to understand some of the problems or issues that people might be having. So I would certainly, you know, recommend it to friends to explore it, and just to look at things in a different way, because there's a really sort of elegant sort of simplicity to this, and I mean, when we were talking about a lot of things on the program, it was amazing, because I think, well, you know, this is the stuff we're talking about is things in our everyday that we're familiar with. We know it's not that this is a completely alien concept, but then you think, well, hang on, why don't I do this, or why aren't I aware of these things? And so it's almost the simplicity of things get missed. And I think also people that are maybe suffering with certain issues, certain problems, I think quite often, you know, the sort of help they're getting, if they're getting any help, you know, it might not help them in a way that they engage with. Because I tend to find, certainly from a Western perspective, sometimes some of the remedies to that from a psychological point of view, they're quite negative, quite daunting. It doesn't always feel helpful, and I think that the person can put themselves into that process not feeling empowered, feeling that, you know, the treatment or therapy or whatever is done to them. Whereas I think with TDSL, you know, you're part of, you know, you're central to this process, and you're in control, and you can, you know, at the end of the day, it's for you to trust yourself and look inward. And I think for some people that would be different. I mean, certainly for myself, you know, there's a point in time where this idea of really looking inward wasn't really a concept. Well, whilst you might think you do it, you know, you've got to again this consciousness about actually realizing that, you know, you've got a lot of the problems, you know, they're inside you, but the answers are inside you as well. So it is quite often just unpicking those things, and you know unpeeling back the onion skin sort of thing. So I think for me, something like TDSL, I think everybody in an individual level would see it in different ways, and would approach it in different ways, or connect with it to different levels. And for me, I don't see why, you know, everybody shouldn't, you know, just try and just engage with it, just to see where it goes. Certainly for me, you know, when I was introduced to this, you know, and I'm really grateful that you know, my mutual friend Peter that sort of connected me with this. Then, you know, I had no idea with what I was going to be looking at. But naturally, I'm interested in this space and curious as to, you know, where we can go with this. And I think if anybody's got a little bit of curiosity, that to me is enough. If you've got a little bit of curiosity, or you want to sort of, you know, develop yourself or communicate with yourself better, then to me, there'll be something in TDSL for you in that.
What impact has this had on you within that short space of 5 weeks? Even
now, I still feel the effects of it, which in a positive way, that it's still working. And actually, just the other day, I was having a look at some of the notes, some of the written material from the program, and reading it again, it was really interesting that even though I remember at the time I was reading the information, you know, what I was considering, you know, reading it thoroughly, but then the other day when I read it again, I was seeing different things in there. I was reading things, so it's whether I was in a different sort of mind frame, or whether that in the time that maybe there has been some change, and then how I'm looking at things are different. So to me, I'm seeing maybe the impact in that sort of measure. There's a before and after, so which is interesting. So I mean, you know, maybe another month's time, I might read some of the same things again, and you know, I'm going to guess that I'll probably see something different there again. So something's happening there. So it's something interesting.
I can really relate to what you just said. So I've been doing this work with individuals for the last 15 years. And prior to that, I spent 4 years studying directly with Vernon Bell. And I'm still discovering now more about this after all this time in an ongoing way. And I believe this is true of anything of any true value and depth, is that the more we look, the more we realize there is to discover.
Mm.
And I certainly find this with the core principle of the dialogue of self-liberation. The more we look, the more we realize there is to discover within it, really, and the practical applications of this. And in this particular way, therefore, could I ask you, how do you feel the dialogue of self-liberation can help a person to improve their quality of communication with other people?
I think with a lot of things, in order to interact better with other people, you know, how you interact with yourself, how you communicate with yourself, that's something that, you know, I've realized certainly the last few years when I've been sort of exploring some of these, you know, the different perspectives around these sort of things. You know, at the end of the day, more self-compassion you show, you're more self-compassion, the more compassion you show to other people, you know, the more ultimately, the more just the more connected in yourself, and the way you communicate better with yourself, you know, and you're going to communicate better with other people. And by doing that, naturally, they're going to communicate better with you, I would say. And that's just an ongoing process. You know, it's like just a, I was going to say like a vicious circle, but in a positive way, you know, a happy loop. So a positive, you know, a positive cycle. But certainly, you know, I can see how these negative communications have sent people into a downward spiral, and this just gets deeper and deeper, and it roots itself. So in the same way, you know, that same spiral can go the other way, and it can result in a really positive way. And I think in a way, if you communicate better with other people, and which helps them to communicate, you know, they end up communicating better with you. It's just, again, this holistic sort of essence where, you know, you and yourself are improving, they're improving, the relationship between you is improving, and it might be that person, how they then go and communicate with another person, you know, is better again. So this thing just sort of, I don't know, cultivates itself, just sort of propagates in a positive way.
If there was a person who was watching this interview who was wondering, well, is there maybe something for me in joining the TDSL Live Program, but they were a little bit on the fence, what would you say to them?
I would certainly say, just go for it, just do it. I mean, ultimately, you know, you've got absolutely nothing to lose, and everything to gain. I think that the word I would sort of sit on is that, again, for that, if that element of curiosity, if there's any curiosity with you, or, you know, you've got that urge to develop yourself in a you know, in a positive way, then yeah, you should definitely look at this, because there's so many different facets to this as well. I mean, certainly in the program, there was lots of different mediums in which we were communicating and talking about things, different techniques. You know, some written, some audio, the discussions. There was a real depth of how we were engaging with the material, and I can imagine that different people engage with the material in different ways. I mean, I enjoyed all the different ways, and for me, that variety helped to just sort of soak in the subject matter and to then feel it at a sort of deeper level. So I think if you're prepared to sort of, you know, that curiosity, and, you know, for some people, maybe, you know, it does feel like, you know, you have to take a chance to sort of, oh, is there something different? But then again, if you've been experiencing things in a way that, certainly, if you think that things can be better, well, why wouldn't you want to make the change? You know, this can be a change. You know, yes, it's you think, oh, this is different, but that's different. That's maybe what we need. You know, we need different. So if you look at, you know, want to see something different, and, you know, that curiosity to do that, then, you know, wholeheartedly, I would recommend that, you know, they engage with the program. You know, for me personally, you know, I've got a lot from that, and I didn't sort of. And I went into it partly, you know, partly from this curiosity, you know, in a sort of open-minded sort of way, and, you know, from an interest perspective. but I think if I went into the program with some specific things that I really wanted to look at, then I think the scope to get even more from it is even greater, because you've got something to really, really focus on. I think for myself, there's so many sort of broad areas that are still sort of ticking around, and like I'm still getting the benefit from those things. But and hopefully this is in a more preventative way, that I won't start planting weeds, and then things just get more positive. So yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend this to other people.
John, thank you so much for taking the time to speak like this. And like with the various other live program participants like yourself that I've been conducting interviews with lately, the answers to these questions that you're providing are going to be really positively influential to the people who watch these little videos. And by doing this, by choosing to answer these questions in such a transparent and straightforward and honest way, this is you leading by example, by explaining to people what benefits you feel from the material in the live program. And this is going to encourage a lot of people to have the courage to act upon this and to engage in the program themselves. So I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time to speak to me like this.